So I'm going to use what's called a sprite sheet now, and these are pretty cool and pretty handy. So what I'm going to do first, I've downloaded one, but obviously for your purposes, you are going to make one. You will draw one, but just for the sake of learning how to do it, we're going to do this. So this is a sprite sheet. A sprite sheet is basically a sheet that has all the different movements that a character will make, and then you can place them together. You can layer them and put them in your animation program, and it gives the illusion of movement, because that's essentially what Animate does. That's what animation is. It gives the illusion of movement when there actually isn't any. It's placing a lot of things together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my rectangle marquee tool. Again, like I said, I've opened this up in Photoshop, and I'm going to just, here we're about 36, so exactly middle of the screen is 18. So I'm going to drag, select just below, maybe just below the pause a bit, so there's a bit of a gap. Okay, so then with this one selected, because it's all we can see, just one layer of stuff, I'm going to go edit, cut, and then edit, paste. Okay. So now when you do that in Photoshop, it automatically adds it to its new layer. So I'm just going to go up to my selection tool. I'm going to move it over the first frame, and then I'm going to hide it. I'm just going to click on this eye. And then I'm just going to repeat that for each of the other ones. Okay, so again with 18, I'll go down here. So Command X for me, Control X on a PC to cut. Oops, idiot. Make sure you've got the right layer selected. So just click on that one. Cut, and then paste. You can see again, it makes a new layer. Go to my selection tool. Just basically lining up maybe lining up the head would make more sense. Move it above the other one, and then hide that one too. So if I bring them back, bang, bang. I'll just bring the head, head's there, head's good. I'll line up the head for the other one because I don't think I did. There we go. And select the bottom layer again. I'm just going to repeat this process, so you can probably just fast forward a smidge. Okay, cut, paste, move, drag it up to the top, and then hide it. Repeat the process. Now the reason I'm doing this is, again, forgot to select that layer. The reason I'm doing this is it'll make your life a lot easier when you go to animate your sprite sheets later on, and I'll show you that in a sec. Move to the top, hide, bottom, I'm just going to bring all these back in now. I'm done. Okay, and they're all laid over the top of each other. So what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to go to my crop tool. Oops. There it is in the image menu. So I'm just going to select an area just like that. I'm going to go to image and choose crop. And there we go. And that's just got rid of all the extra space that we didn't need. Okay. So now I'm just going to call this, I'll just save it as we'll call it running cat PSD. Okay. So PSD is, as you can see there, is just format Photoshop. We just need to save it as a regular Photoshop file. And the reason being is that Photoshop and Animate are both Adobe products, so they talk to each other. So now, back in Animate, I can now go File, Import to Library, and it'll ask me what I want to import, and there it is, the running cat PSD. And it'll give you all these options there, and we want to go create, see this option there that says create movie clip? That's what we want. Okay. Yep. So we can leave that pretty much. Import, library, and here it is. Okay. So it's brought each of those in as layers. Probably not sure I wanted that after all, but so what I've done is I've double clicked this bottom one. You can see this little icon means it's a movie clip. So I'm going to click, and you can see there I'm in the movie clip of layer 7. I'm going to rename that later on. I've probably done that a bit backwards, but it's alright. So I'm going to go to the next frame. So maybe 2 frames along we'll go. Right click and choose insert keyframe. So then I'm going to drag in my next one, but I'm going to click on the bottom one and delete him. Like I said before, because I've added a keyframe, it only makes a change from that point. So he'll still exist in the first one, but in the second frame, I'll have that. Okay, so then I'm going to go 2 frames along again, insert keyframe. This time I'm going to drag in layer 5. Just going to line up the feed a smidge. This probably looks a little bit dodgy when it's done. Click on the one I just had in the previous frame, delete that. And you can see here now that we're starting to give the illusion of animation. So 2 frames along, again, right click, insert keyframe, drag in the next one. Again, I'm just sort of lining it up with the feet. That seems to be probably a better way of doing it. Ish. And click on the previous one and delete. I'm just pressing the delete key on my keyboard for that. Right click, insert keyframe, drag in the other one. Another 2 frames, insert keyframe. I'm just gonna, I can't click on the other one to select to delete it without clicking on the one in front. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go Command X to cut. I'm going to, now that I've placed it, I'm going to click on that bottom one and press the delete key on my keyboard. And then I'm going to go up here and choose Edit, Paste in Place. That's going to put it back exactly where I cut it from. I tend to use that a bit. It helps quite a bit in other bits, but we'll get to that later on. Insert keyframe again. Insert keyframe. So what we get when we play it now is that. Now I have done it backwards, which is a bit silly of me, but there's an easy fix to that. Okay, so I'm just pressing the return on my keyboard, like that. Just pressing return over and over. So what I can do now to play it the right way is I'm just going to click on frame 1. I'm going to do this all in one movement. So I'm going to click and hold and drag, just like that. All right, the reason I said that is because if I click and hold for too long, sometimes you can get a menu that pops up there. So just click and hold and drag to select all of those frames. Right click on any of those selected frames and choose reverse frames. Okay, so then I'm just going to go and press return. And we get a running motion. We need to move it to line it up a little bit better, but we're getting that running motion. You can see here, I've only got one frame in the first frame because of the way I did it. So what I'm going to do is just right click there and choose insert frame. Oops, wrong one. Click on the first frame and choose insert frame. And that just extends it out. If you insert a frame instead of a keyframe, it just basically extends it out. So now if I press return, there we go. So what I might do, this is our, this cross here is called our registration point. I might use that as our way of lining it up. So I'm just going to click on the next keyframe. I'm just very sort of loosely lining, using the registration point to line it up with sort of the middle of the cat's back. So now if I go back to frame 1 and play it, and now if I keep pressing return, enough you can see that it looks like it's just going to keep bounding. Now, the cool thing is that remembering that we're in movie symbol edit mode here. So with this movie symbol here, that's this little icon where it's, and you can see there it's called layer 7. I'm just going to click on that. I'm going to right click on it and choose rename, and I'm going to call it running cat. And I'm going to move it, drag it up out of this folder. Right there, so then I don't need that bit of the folder anymore. Now, what's cool about a movie clip is that they loop for the entire time they are on your stage, which is why sprites can be good. So if you want to create, say, a game where you've got a character that runs, you don't have to animate them running every single step. You do one sequence of left to right, and then if you put it inside a movie clip, it'll loop that animation over and over, and it just looks like it's keeping on doing it. Saves you a stack of time. So for that example, like I said, I've made a movie clip, but I'm not in the main animation. So I click back here on scene 1 to go back to my main stage. You can see there's nothing there. That's because we were in symbol edit mode. So we now need to just drag this cat from our library onto our stage. I'm just going to position him on the bottom. And you can see there still, there's only one frame. If I press return, nothing happens. Movie clips don't animate on your stage. So to see what your actual animation is going to look like, you need to go up to your control menu and come down here and choose test movie. Probably just in animate is fine. So I'll just click on that and it'll bring up a pop-up menu. There you go. So it's looping that movement that we've just done with the cat. So it looks like he's running over and over and over. And as long as he's on the stage, he will just do that. So you could do two things here. You could create a little background that you animate behind him, so it looks like he's running through a scene, almost like, you know, sort of an endless runner or a Super Mario kind of vibe. Or you could use the motion twins that we learned in the previous lesson to animate him running across the screen. So that'll be good practice. Now, an important thing, good practice we're about to do, I should point out, but an important thing to remember is that motion tweens, like we created before, or classic tweens, they have to be on their own layer. So I'm just going to go up here. Here's my layer window here. Just click on the text, double click on the text rather, and type in running cat. You can, like with our tools before, you can just drag this along to the right a little bit so we can see the name. And I'm going to click over here. See this little, looks like a page with a corner turned up at the bottom. If you hold your mouse over without clicking, it says new layer. I'm going to click on that. And it creates a new layer, shockingly. So I'm just going to double click on that and call it background. And like with in film editing programs, the higher up the list of your layers, and once you start doing a more detailed or in-depth animation, you'll end up with lots and lots of layers. The higher up the list, the closer it is to the front of your screen. So if I were, for example, on my background, I'm going to get my cat to run past a dodgy tree. So I'm going to use my pencil tool, and I'm going to draw the world's dodgiest tree. Like that. And I'm going to fill it. I'm going to step back and show you how to do this in a sec. So you can see that the trunk of my tree covers the cat. We don't want that. That's our background. And as you can see, it's above the running cat layer, so it goes in front of it, or closer to the front of the screen. To change that, all I need to do is just click and hold on the layer and drag it. You can see I've got that line there. Drag it down below, and it then goes behind. Okay, so you can reposition your layers as much as you want and position stuff in between. Okay, so I'm just going to click on this frame so that everything on my layer is selected and press delete, because I don't want that. And now I'll show you how to draw. We haven't really done the drawing tools bit yet too much, so I'll show you that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pencil tool, which is this guy. Now you can see before, when I sort of, if I draw a nice sort of curved thing like that, you can see it makes it all jagged. That's because down here, one of the tools I've got is straighten. So generally, I would change that to ink, and that basically makes less changes when I draw something. So I'm just going to draw a really sort of dodgy looking tree now. Just going to give it a basic sort of trunk like that. And it needs to be closed off if I'm going to fill it. That shape needs to be closed off with no gaps. Okay. So I'm now going to go to my fill color. I'm going to make it sort of that brownish kind of color. And I'm going to choose my paint bucket, and I'm going to click on it, and it won't fill. Why is that? Why? Well, I'll tell you. Sometimes, even though it looks like a closed off shape, I might have left, particularly down here where I was messing around a bit, I might have left a really small hole in the line. So with this option here, this little circle, when I've got my paint bucket filled, if I click and hold on that, it's got don't close gaps, don't close small gaps, etc. So what it does, if I choose close small gaps and click again, still nothing. There we go. I changed it to close medium gaps, and it filled. So what it basically does is it looks for gaps in the line. If there are some, it'll just ignore them and treat them as a closed off shape, and then it'll let me fill anyway. So if you try to fill something and it doesn't do that, go and mess around with that. That'll usually solve your problem. Okay. I'm now going to use my oval tool. I'm going to change my fill like that. Just going to draw random circles to make a really awesome tree. And I don't want all those lines, so I'm going to click on my arrow tool, and you can just, when a line intersects with another line, it breaks it down into a section. Okay, so I can just click on that and press delete. And just click on each of those lines. Oops. If I double click, you see it selects the whole line, which I don't want because that'll delete everything. So that's why I'm doing it just in sections at the moment. And what I might actually do is I'll just bring that line back. I might just bring it over here and just use my marquee selection just to get rid of a little bit of it. drag it over here just to add a bit of, I mean, it's a dodgy tree anyway, it doesn't really matter, but just to make it look a little bit more interesting. So I'm just going to go copy paste, grab that line, and here's another thing you'll use a bit as well is your transform tool. So that's this third one, free transform tool. Just going to click on that, and with my line selected, I can move my mouse to the corner like that, and I get that little circle. That means I can rotate just like that. Okay. I can also, I'll just undo that. That's also if you want to enlarge stuff. That's how you do that, using your transform tool. And you can see there, if I'm just transforming it by hand, it's squishing it all over the place. So if I hold down the shift key on my keyboard and enlarge it, it'll keep it in proportion. Likewise, if I hold down my shift key when I rotate, it'll snap it to 45 degrees. Okay, so that makes it easier as well. So I'll just drag that over here. Will I? No, I might put it up here. Oops. I'm going to use my arrow keys on my keyboard just to position it a little bit more smoothly. And I might just go one more. I don't know why I'm doing this really, it's not that important, but just going to get rid of the transform tool so I can just move it. There we go, there's my dodgy tree. Okay, so you can see the bottom of the tree goes off the stage here. But that doesn't matter, because when you preview it, I showed you before, Control Test Movie. The shortcut for this is to press on a Mac Command Return or on a PC Control Enter. If I just go Command Return, that publishes it. Okay. So like I was saying before, we can do this two ways. We can have the, I'm going to firstly leave the tree there. So I'm just going to move my tree across here. And also, see this lock here? I'm just going to, underneath the lock, I'm just going to click on that dot for that layer. Bang, like that. That means that layer is now locked. I can't do anything to it. I can't accidentally grab it, which is handy when you're trying to deal with multiple objects. Okay. If you click on the lock itself up here, it locks every single layer, and then you can just click on the dot to unlock one. That can be really handy when you've drawn a lot of layers later on and you just want to deal with one at a time. Okay, you don't have to go one by one and click them all. You can just go bang and then just unlock the one you need. Okay, so we're going to use a classic tween like we did before in the very first lesson with the square to animate our cat across the stage. So we want to choose our starting point. We want him to start all the way off the stage. So think of your stage as like a stage in a theatre. Okay, this big white square, when anytime someone moves onto this stage, they can be seen by the audience. But if they're just standing off the side of the stage, they can't be seen. So if I go Command Return now to test my animation, it's just a single frame of a tree. It doesn't get any more exciting than that. And the cat is still technically here, but we haven't animated or moved him, so the audience will never see him. So you can actually have stuff lined up ready to go when you're animating stuff. So we're just going to have the cat run across the screen over a period of 5 seconds. So I want for the cat at 25 frames a second, that'll take 125 frames. So I go up here to frame 125, I right click, I choose Insert Keyframe, and I move him. So I want him to move all the way the other side of the stage. That's with my endpoint selected, like that, get his tail all the way off, there we go. So my starting point, the first frame, he starts over here. My ending point, the last frame, he ends over there. And then I just right click anywhere on that layer between those two keyframes and choose Create Classic Tween, just like we did before. So I'm going to press Return now. Like I said before, he's gliding because movie clips don't animate in your timeline or on the stage. It's just showing us that the tween's working. If I go Command Return or Control Enter on a PC, there you go, and it loops the animation as well. Okay, so it just goes back to the start. So it's probably taken too long. You can see it just sort of lumbers a bit So if we want to shorten that, we don't need to do the whole bit again. We're just going to click once on that end frame and let go. And then we move our mouse over, you'll see we get this little square. We can then just click and hold and drag that keyframe back. Okay. Then all we're going to do is just click and hold and drag those frames that we've got left at the end. Choose right click, remove frames. So now it's the exact same movement, the exact same animation, but it's happening over 4 seconds instead of 5. Press Command Return again. Look at him go. Speedy little fella. Now you can see the obvious other issue we've got is that our tree flashes for 1 second, or not even 1 frame. So cat runs along, tree, gone. Cat runs along, tree, gone. So we need to fix that. Easy way to fix that, all right? The reason that's happening is because our tree on our background layer only exists in this 1 frame. It only exists for 1 frame out of 100. Okay, that's not enough. So like I was saying before, you can just use, instead of a keyframe, insert frame to just extend it out. We don't want to animate our tree or do anything like that at this stage. All we want to do is just have it on the stage for a longer period of time. So we just click on frame 100, right click and choose insert frame. It doesn't animate, we don't have to convert it to a symbol or anything like that. It just makes it on the stage longer. Now if we press Command Return, oops, press it, there we go. There we go. Tree's there. Cat runs past. Beautiful. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to undo all that and show the other way we can do it, which is to animate. And it's exactly the same process, really. We're just going to add a tween to the tree instead of the cat. So what I might do, what I might do, I might just, all right, I'm just going to click and hold and drag and select all of these frames except for frame 1. Okay, so you can see I click and hold and drag, I've still got frame 1 and on both layers selected. I'm going to right click on those selected frames and choose remove frames. They're all gone. I've still got my tween there, which I don't want. So I'm just going to right click in that running cat first layer, first frame, and choose remove tween. So what I'm going to do now is move my cat back in the middle of the stage. So if I go Command Return now, okay, that's all that's going to happen. So it keeps looping that movie clip over and over for as long as he's on the stage. Just going to move him back a little smidge. So what I want to do is just lock that cat layer, because the movement's actually going to come from the background moving past the cat now. And this is like, you know, platform games like Super Mario and stuff. The character stays in the middle of the screen while as they move, the background moves behind them. It gives the illusion of them moving through a background when actually you're animating the background. So, like just before with the square in the very first lesson, we need to, before we can make a tween, we need to select our tree. So I'm just going to use, you can do it 2 ways actually. If it's the only thing on the layer, you can click on frame 1 where the keyframe is, and it selects everything that's on that layer. You can see there the entire tree is now selected. Or with the other layer, the running cat layer locked, so you can't select it, you can just click on your arrow tool and do a marquee selection by clicking and dragging around the entire tree, just like that. Both will work. You just want to make sure that it's dotty and we've got the lines. Right click, convert to symbol. I'm going to call this tree because I'm clever. Okay. So we want the tree to start off the right-hand side of the stage. Okay. And we're just going to have the cat run for about, say, a second. So we'll just right-click and choose Insert Keyframe for the background, because we want the tree just to stay off the stage for a bit. We don't want it to immediately start animating across the stage. So it's going to sit off the side for a bit, and then we're going to have the tree move across the stage over a period of 4 seconds. So at 25 frames a second, that's 100 frames added to 25. So we're going to go to frame 125. We're going to right click, still on the background layer, and choose Insert Keyframe. And then we want to just grab our tree and drag it all the way off the opposite side of the stage. So our starting point for this animation is at frame 25, this keyframe. So the tree starts there, the end point ends there. So again, like before, same thing. Same technique, right click anywhere between these two keyframes and choose Create Classic Tween. And what will happen, like I said will happen, hopefully, is that the tree will sit there for 1 second and then move across the stage over a period of 4 seconds. Press return on my keyboard. Bada bing, there we go. And now, just like we did in the previous version, because the cat only exists for 1 frame, we just need to go to frame 125 and extend him out. Right click, insert frame. Like I said, we only need to extend him because all the animation is happening inside the movie clip. We don't need to add a tween or anything for the cat to animate. So now if we go Command Return, so he's running through a background. That could be anything. You could have a more interesting background than white. You could have clouds. You could have different trees. That's pretty cool. So let's quickly do that just to show you one other thing. So I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to drag it just above the background layer but behind the running cat layer. Reason being, like I said before, is that we've added a tween to our tree. So that tree now needs to be on its own layer. If we start adding other stuff to that same layer, it'll get confused and mess things up. So I'm just going to double click and call it background stuff. And what I'm going to do is just use my pen tool, and I'm going to just draw a really sort of rough, and just, it doesn't matter about this background because all this part in the grey is not going to be seen by the audience, so I'm just trying to close off the shape so I can fill it. And I'm going to fill it with dark green grass. There we go. And then I'm again going to use my pencil tool. Now this isn't going to be animated, so it doesn't matter if it's on a different layer or whatever, so we're just going to keep the same layer. This is just going to be sort of a sky shape, but just to make it a little bit more interesting, what we're going to do, instead of just using a straight up fill this time, is we're going to click on our paint bucket and we're going to click on our fill, but up here, or down here even, you can see we've got a gradient. So I'm just going to click on that. I'm going to fill, and obviously it looks ugly, but we're going to fix it. So firstly, if we go to our transform tool up here, we want it going from light to dark from top to bottom, not left to right. So click and hold on your transform tool, and you'll see the second option there is gradient transform tool. So we're going to click on our gradient, and we're just going to rotate it. Okay, you can see if I move my mouse over this little circle there, I can just drag down, and I've just rotated by 90 degrees, my gradient, so it's going from lighter to darker. All right, what I can also do, because you can see I've got lines there, is I can bring those lines in, just like that, just scrolling up. And that just means that that gradient will happen over more of a period, so we'll see, over a shorter period, so we'll see it go from dark to light in a more condensed area. If I just drag this back down, you'll see that it won't be, see like that, it's getting lighter there, because it's stretching the gradient out over a wider frame. So you can just mess with that to get a look that you like. So then, using my arrow tool, I'm going to click on my gradient, there it is there, and I'm going to go up here to this little tool called my color palette. Bang, right there. If you can't see that, your color, like all windows, you can get through your window menu. There it is right there. So there, I can see the colors of my gradient along the bottom. So I'm just going to click on, it's got two little houses at the bottom, the black and the white, which is what makes up this grey. It transforms over a period between white to black, which gives us this sort of, darker towards the bottom and light towards the top. So I'm going to do it over two shades of blue to make it look like a slightly darker sky, slightly lighter sky. So at the top where the white is, I'm going to double click on the white and I'm going to choose sort of this sky blue color. And then I'm going to double click on the black, right there. Can't get it. I'm going to make it just like that. So I'll bring my color back. I had a few issues there. I couldn't click on that black one. There we go. There we go. I couldn't do that before. And then change it to blue. Okay. Just to make sure I actually did that. There we go. That's what I wanted. Just to explain what had happened there, I changed the colors of the gradient, but I hadn't actually selected the gradient the second time around, so it hadn't changed it. Okay. But now that's what I got. So if we go Command Return, you won't see all these ugly edges around because they're off the side of the stage. So if we go Command Return, I'm not sure what happened to our tree. Oh, yes, I am. What an idiot. Our tree is on the bottom layer, so we can't see it through all these colors we just added. So we just need to click and hold on background and drag it up one layer. Go Command Return again. We should be able to see it. There it is. Okay, pretty cool. And that's how you use a sprite sheet. And there are other ways of doing it as well. I might share that at another time, but that's an easy way of remembering it, is placing it by hand. And using your layers, renaming your layers, and using tweens to add movement.